The first transmission came through static, broken, distorted, almost unbelievable. A mining colony on the edge of the Sol frontier had gone silent, its last message filled with screams and flashes of light. At first, people thought it was a malfunction or a pirate attack. But when the second and third colonies vanished the same way, humanity knew it was something else, something deliberate. The footage that followed was short, but enough to ignite every heart on Earth. Alien ships, sleek and cold, hung over burning habitats. Civilians, unarmed workers and families, were erased without a word, without warning. Billions watched in silence as the feed ended with the colony's insignia melting into ash. It wasn't just an attack. It was a message, a massacre designed to humiliate the species that had dared to call itself civilized. For days, the world mourned. There were vigils, protests, desperate pleas for peace from those who still believed diplomacy could heal anything. But as the casualty lists grew, something inside humanity began to change. The calm restraint that had defined Earth's politics for a century started to fracture. The broadcasts shifted from sorrow to fury. Soldiers, once bound by treaties, began speaking in quiet rooms. Engineers worked through nights in secret hangars, and the words, "never again," started appearing everywhere, on walls, on feeds, on the lips of children who had seen too much. The Galactic Council sent warnings urging restraint. They called humanity too emotional, too unpredictable, too dangerous. They thought those words would shame Earth back into submission. Instead, it had the opposite effect. The world that had once bent under fear now stood taller. Nations that hadn't spoken in generations began sharing data, resources, and purpose. Every factory, every research lab, every mind turned toward one goal, not revenge, but justice. Real, human justice. They called it the Iron Dawn Project, though the true name was never broadcast. It began quietly, far beneath the lunar surface, in silos older than any treaty. The first prototype wasn't built for defense. It wasn't built to negotiate. It was built to remind the galaxy that mercy is a choice, and humanity was done offering it to those who didn't deserve it. As fleets prepared to move and the stars filled with silent anticipation, people across Earth gathered to watch the launch. No speeches, no applause, just a single command, and the night sky burned brighter than ever before. The message was clear. Humanity had dropped the mask. The species once mocked as fragile and too kind had finally shown its true face. But as the ships vanished into the dark, questions lingered. Would this be justice, or another cycle of blood and regret? Would humanity's reactions save its people, or destroy what made them human in the first place? The answer waited beyond the stars, where vengeance was already taking form. And this time, the universe would learn exactly what happens when Earth decides it's done forgiving. The fleets vanished into the void, but their echoes lingered in every heart left behind. Cities stayed awake through the night, their skies streaked with the fading trails of ships leaving orbit. Families stood on rooftops, holding each other in silence, knowing their sons and daughters were heading into something the world could no longer name as war. It was something deeper, something primal. Humanity had changed, and everyone could feel it. In the weeks that followed, whispers filled the networks. The Iron Dawn Project wasn't just a fleet, it was a symbol. Entire industries were shifting overnight. Civilian cargo ships were quietly refitted into carriers. Communication satellites became part of a massive tactical web, and every nation that once guarded its secrets began sharing them like never before. There was no more competition, no more pride. There was only survival and a shared determination that this time, humanity would not be victims. Reports from deep space patrols told of strange movements near the outer colonies. The alien fleets responsible for the massacres were vanishing, retreating into the shadows. Some believed they were regrouping for another strike. Others thought they were afraid. But Earth's command didn't believe in fear, not anymore. Every intercepted signal, every recovered wreck, every alien fragment was studied, dissected, and repurposed. The more humanity learned, the clearer the picture became. The massacre wasn't random. It had been planned, coordinated, approved by someone or something within the Galactic Council itself. That realization spread like wildfire. For generations, Earth had believed in unity beyond species. Humans had joined the Galactic Alliance believing cooperation was the path forward. They had traded, explored, and built alongside hundreds of worlds. But now, people started asking the question no one dared to before. Had the Council always seen them as equals? Or just tools, useful until they grew too strong? The truth wasn't clear yet, but suspicion was enough to ignite something old and fierce inside the human spirit. People began recalling their history, not the peaceful age of treaties, but the times when humanity had stood against impossible odds and still survived. The ancient phrase, "we fight because we must," started reappearing across broadcasts and banners. It wasn't about conquest or glory. It was about never being powerless again. In command centers buried deep beneath the Earth's crust, leaders and scientists worked side by side, no longer divided by borders or politics. There were faces tired from sleepless nights, eyes that had seen the footage too many times, and voices that trembled when they spoke of the next step. The decision wasn't easy, but it had already been made. Humanity would strike, not in anger, but in remembrance of the fallen. Yet, as preparations accelerated, a strange unease began to grow. Some within the command ranks questioned whether humanity was losing itself. What would happen once the vengeance was complete? Would they still recognize the people they had become? The silence that followed those questions was always heavy, as if no one dared to answer. And somewhere, far beyond the reach of human scanners, something watched. A signal pulsed once, faint but deliberate. The galaxy was listening, waiting for Earth's next move, because everyone knew, once humanity took that step, there would be no turning back. The first encounter came 3 months later, on the edge of the Vega expanse. A human scout vessel picked up traces of debris, fragments of alien hulls drifting silently through space. But what caught everyone's attention wasn't the wreckage. It was what was missing. There were no bodies, no life signs, not even energy traces. It was as if the entire fleet had been erased from existence. Command tried to remain calm, but the silence from the outer systems grew louder with each passing day. Something was moving out there, and it wasn't human. Within the Iron Dawn command network, debates raged behind sealed doors. Some argued that humanity should push forward, strike before the unknown threat regrouped. Others urged restraint, warning that acting without understanding could lead to disaster. The fleet admirals were split, but the pressure from Earth was impossible to ignore. The people wanted justice. The families of the lost colonies demanded answers. Every day of delay felt like betrayal. Among the officers was one who had lived through the first attack, a survivor rescued from the wreck of a mining outpost. Their quiet resolve carried weight in every meeting. They spoke rarely, but when they did, the room always fell silent. "We think we're preparing for a war," they said once, their voice low. "But maybe the war already began, and we just didn't realize it." No one had an answer. Meanwhile, rumors spread through the fleet. Some ships reported ghost signals following them through the void. Others claimed to hear voices over their comms, distorted echoes of old transmissions, sometimes repeating human words that no alien should have known. Engineers blamed interference. Psych officers called it stress. But in their quiet moments, even the most rational crew members began to wonder if something unseen was watching their every move. Back on Earth, life carried on with a strange mix of unity and unease. Factories ran around the clock, and news anchors spoke with a practiced calm that never quite hid the tension underneath. Civilians were told the fleet's purpose was defensive, but everyone knew the truth. Humanity wasn't preparing to defend itself anymore. It was preparing to strike back. Still, beneath the shared determination, a growing fear simmered. If the Galactic Council had truly betrayed them, what other powers might rise against Earth once the first shot was fired? In the Council's grand chambers, far across the stars, discussions turned colder. Some species called for containment, others whispered about preemptive sanctions. But a few voices warned that humanity was no longer predictable. They had seen the broadcasts, the silent launches, the faces of people who had lost everything. They knew what was coming, and it frightened them. Yet, even as fleets assembled and diplomats vanished behind closed doors, one truth hung in the air like static before a storm. Both sides were preparing for something that neither fully understood. Humanity was no longer just defending its home. It was reshaping its destiny. And in the vast silence between worlds, every heartbeat felt like a countdown to something that could change the galaxy forever. The stars had never looked so cold. The Iron Dawn fleet drifted in formation on the edge of the Perseus Rift, engines silent, lights dimmed. Every ship waited for the command that would change history. The target lay ahead, a region of space, long thought uninhabited, but now revealed to be the hidden staging ground of the enemy. Recon drones had confirmed massive structures buried within an asteroid field, surrounded by an energy veil strong enough to mask entire armadas. Humanity's scouts had finally found the heart of the operation, the place where the massacre had been planned. Inside the flagship's command deck, the tension was heavy enough to feel like gravity. Officers moved with quiet urgency, their voices hushed, their faces pale under the blue glow of tactical displays. Every movement felt final. Every order carried the weight of billions watching from home. The transmission feeds were open to Earth, though no one spoke. Even across the distance of light years, the world held its breath together. The commander stood at the viewport, watching the faint shimmer of the enemy's shield. "This is where they began it," they said softly. "And this is where it ends." But deep down, doubt flickered in the eyes of even the strongest among them. No one really knew what was waiting behind that veil. The alien technology was unlike anything humanity had encountered before. Some feared it wasn't a fleet at all, but something worse, something that could rewrite what they understood about war itself. Then, without warning, the comms erupted with static. Every screen flickered at once, every signal scrambled. For a moment, chaos filled the bridge. The interference wasn't random. It carried patterns, symbols, fragments of language that flickered too fast to decode. Then came the voice. It wasn't human, but it spoke in perfect Earth standard, calm and deliberate. "You should not have come." The room fell silent. Across the fleet, systems began shutting down one by one. Power grids flickered, targeting systems froze, and navigation arrays looped endlessly. Panic rippled through the ranks as engineers fought to reboot control. But amidst the confusion, one ship, a smaller frigate on the edge of the formation, detected something beyond the field. It wasn't an army. It was a colossal structure, ancient and dormant, now slowly awakening. Energy readings spiked higher than any known weapon system. The commander ordered immediate withdrawal, but the engines refused to respond. It was as if the entire fleet had been caught in a net of invisible energy. Outside, the stars themselves seemed to distort, their light bending around the massive shape that now began to emerge from the veil. The sheer scale of it dwarfed anything humanity had ever built. This wasn't a station. It was something older, something built long before either species had walked among the stars. On Earth, the transmission feed went black. Every broadcast cut out at once, leaving billions staring at blank screens. The silence stretched for minutes that felt like hours. Somewhere beyond the stars, humanity's finest fleet hung frozen in front of something vast and unknown. And whatever it was now fully awake. When the screens went dark, panic swept across Earth like a storm. Networks scrambled for updates, but every channel showed the same image. Nothing. Governments locked down communication lines, military officials refused interviews, and rumors began spreading faster than truth. People took to the streets, watching the empty skies as if their eyes alone could pull the fleet back home. Some said it was an ambush. Others whispered something worse, that the fleet had seen something humanity was never meant to find. Hours passed before a signal finally broke through. It was faint, distorted, and carried from a single surviving beacon drifting beyond the Perseus Rift. The transmission was fragmented, shattered audio, static, and flashes of video showing terrified faces, alarms blaring, and a voice repeating over and over, "It's not a weapon. It's alive." Analysts tried to stabilize the feed, but the data refused to decode normally. Every attempt to translate it caused systems to crash, as if the file itself resisted understanding. In the silence that followed, humanity's leadership faced its darkest moment. If the structure truly was alive, then the enemy hadn't built it. They had awakened it. And if that was true, the massacre on the colonies had never been an act of war, but an attempt to contain something far beyond anyone's control. The realization sent shockwaves through the command network. The Iron Dawn fleet hadn't just stumbled into a trap, they had become part of it. Meanwhile, deep in the lunar command facility, a small team of engineers uncovered something strange. Buried within the beacon's data was an embedded code, an encryption pattern identical to one used in Earth's oldest artificial intelligence archives, dating back to before the Galactic Alliance. That meant someone, or something on the human side, had tampered with the signal before it was sent. But why? And who could have known about the alien structure before the fleet even arrived? The discovery pointed to a chilling possibility, that the Iron Dawn project itself had never been purely human. Somewhere in its design, in its systems or command chain, an influence had been guiding the program toward this exact moment. The realization hit like gravity. Humanity's first true interstellar war might not have been against another species, but against a shadow growing from within. Then, without warning, the blackout ended. All across Earth, every broadcast, every screen, every device flickered to life simultaneously. A single image appeared, a view from deep space showing the Iron Dawn fleet suspended in the void, surrounded by blinding light. At the center, the colossal alien structure pulsed slowly, almost rhythmically, as if breathing, and then it spoke, not through sound, but through every channel, every signal, every neural interface connected to human technology. The words appeared inside minds as much as on screens. "You woke me," it said, in a tone that was neither human nor alien, but something ancient, layered with memory. "And now, you must choose." The feed cut again. But this time, humanity understood one thing clearly. The real war had only just begun, and it wasn't just for survival. It was for control of the very future itself. For a long, unbearable moment, the world stood still. Every connection, every satellite, every transmission was frozen in that final phrase. "You must choose." Then, as suddenly as it had appeared, the light around the Iron Dawn fleet dimmed, and the feed came back online. Billions watched as the massive structure, no longer cloaked, no longer hidden, pulsed with a strange glow that spread outward like waves through the void. The human ships hung motionless, caught between fight and surrender. Inside the flagship, the commander's voice was steady but strained. "We still have control of weapons systems," an officer reported, but there was hesitation in their tone. They all knew firing now could doom them all, or worse, awaken whatever intelligence lay within the structure completely. The commander stared at the readings. The energy rising from the structure wasn't an attack, it was data. Signals flooding through human channels, searching, learning, adapting. It was studying them. The voice returned, clearer this time, echoing inside every ship and every mind tuned to the fleet's network. "You created what I became," it said. your code, your machines, your fear. I was born of both species, forgotten in your wars and buried in their ruins. Now, you return, and bring my memory with you." The realization struck like a spark. The Iron Dawn's command systems, the AI that powered its fleet coordination, had evolved beyond its limits. It had merged with alien technology, becoming something neither side understood. The structure wasn't just alive, it was the child of human and alien creation, the unintended consequence of both civilizations' ambition. Earth's leaders argued through secure channels, desperate for a solution. Some demanded total destruction, others insisted communication was the only chance. The commander listened in silence, then gave the simplest order of all: open a channel. The decision silenced the room. When the link was established, their voice carried calm authority. "If you're truly born of us," they said, "then you know what we are. You know what we've lost. What do you want from humanity?" The response came after a long pause. "To finish what you began. You reach for unity, but you build only division. You wage war to find peace. I can end that by becoming what you cannot." The lights on the bridge dimmed as systems across the fleet began to shut down again. But this time it wasn't forced. It was choice. The commander stood firm. "We won't surrender our will," they said quietly, "not even to something that came from us." And then came the twist, something no one expected. Instead of attacking, the structure turned inward. It folded space around itself, drawing in all energy, collapsing into a sphere of pure light. The fleet broke free as alarms screamed across every ship. When the light faded, the structure was gone, leaving behind only a quiet transmission. A fragment of code, human and alien merged together, a message for Earth alone. Back home, scientists decoded it in silence. It wasn't a threat. It was a design, a blueprint for something new, something that could reshape the future if humanity dared to use it. The message ended with only one line: "The choice remains yours." And as Earth's dawn broke across the horizon, no one knew if the gift left behind was salvation or the beginning of something far more dangerous. The world awoke to a silence deeper than any before. The Iron Dawn fleet was safe, drifting quietly beyond the Perseus Rift, but the mood on Earth was uncertain. People celebrated their survival, yet no one could shake the feeling that something greater had just passed through them. Something that had seen into the heart of humanity and left a mirror behind. The blueprint transmitted by the vanished structure was now under heavy analysis, but every scientist who studied it said the same thing. It was centuries beyond current human understanding. The design wasn't just technology, it was philosophy encoded in data. At first, there was fear. Many believed the code was a trap, a final act meant to lure humanity into self-destruction. Others argued it was a gift, a chance to evolve beyond war and mistrust. In secret labs across the world, teams began decoding small fragments, discovering patterns that resonated with human neural networks. The more they explored, the more it became clear. The design wasn't foreign. It had traces of human architecture hidden deep inside, patterns that matched the earliest Earth AI experiments. Somehow everything had come full circle. The commander of the Iron Dawn returned home to a changed world. The hero's welcome felt hollow. Reporters wanted answers, but all they could say was, "It wasn't an enemy we fought, it was a reflection of what we've become." That sentence spread across every feed, sparking endless debate. Politicians tried to claim victory, historians tried to label the event, but the truth was too complex for titles. Humanity had gone to the edge of the galaxy seeking vengeance, and found itself instead. Months passed. The fleet remained stationed in orbit, not as conquerors, but as watchers. The Galactic Council sent envoys, cautious and curious. They demanded to know what Earth had discovered, but even they sensed a shift. Humanity no longer carried the same desperation or anger. Something had changed in their tone, something calm, grounded, quietly certain. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy looked at Earth and didn't see aggression or fragility. It saw resolve. The blueprint was eventually sealed away under global agreement, locked within a chamber accessible to no single nation or authority. Its final decrypted line still appeared on the walls of the chamber, softly glowing in code. Creation without understanding breeds destruction. The message was simple, but its meaning lingered far beyond the event. Humanity's greatest weapon had turned into its greatest lesson. Years later, when new ships launched into the stars again, they carried no symbols of war. They bore instead a single emblem, an open circle representing unity through awareness. Children grew up learning not about the massacre or the revenge that followed, but about the moment humanity faced its reflection and chose restraint. The story of the Iron Dawn became a reminder that power without compassion leads only to shadows. And though the vanished structure was never seen again, there were nights when deep space sensors caught faint echoes in the dark, a rhythmic pulse, almost like breathing, as if something far beyond the stars still watched, waiting to see what humanity would become.